Oh, the 80s, when Aquanet was putting a hole in the ozone layer, hair metal bands roamed the earth, and the war on drugs was in full swing. It's that last century that led to the creation of one of the most blatantly anti-drug games ever made, Narc. Now, unlike some kid-friendly programs like Dare, Narc went 180 degrees in the other direction, opting to highlight over-the-top violence instead of cute cartoon characters. Playing out over the course of 8 stages, your heavily armed officer of the law wages a one-man war against the forces of evil, which in this case consists of every drugged-out person in the city. You have 2 main weapons at your disposal, a machine gun, which does an admirable job of mowing down enemies, and a rocket launcher, which does an amazing job of vaporizing your enemies, sending them flying across the screen in flames, their screams of pain resonating until they disappear in the ash. For those wanting something a little more cathartic, on one level you get behind the wheel of a cherry red sports car, which allows you to run down the drug addicts. The goal of the game is to fight your way through the city while collecting evidence against the druggies, which honestly is a moot point since 99% of them end up with holes in them or on fire. The only exception are the ones you bust, which fly off the screen and end up in prison. For those using real quarters to play instead of playing on MAME, this is a good strategy since each bust is worth a ton of points, which will help you get extra lives. However, it's not nearly as fun. The enemies run the gamut, from creepy trenchcoat wearing homeless people, to needle throwers that look like they were in an 80s German synth band. There are roided out football players that are difficult to take down, psycho clowns that are, well, psycho, shotgun wielding pimps, and even Rambo wannabes running around with machine guns that are bigger than they are. Aside from the first couple of enemies, most will take multiple machine gun blasts to bring them down. Of course, in a pinch, a well-placed rocket will decimate anything that comes into contact with, even helicopters. The first half of the game is spent on the mean streets of the city, fighting outside in front of sleazy adult bookstores, drug dens, and places you wouldn't want to set foot in even if you were in a hazmat suit. Unfortunately for your cop, if you want to progress to the next stage, you'll have to go inside these buildings and wreak havoc. On each level there is a hidden safe card, which opens up a locked-down door allowing you to progress. Most of the time these are hidden inside objects, trash cans, giant chemical containers, etc. However, from time to time an enemy will be carrying it, which means if they're on screen, they need to die. The second half of the game ramps up the difficulty as you raid Mr. Big's office building, Crack Enterprises. Inside the building is every single enemy type you faced up to that point, as well as Crack Security, which attacks in packs and fills the screen with bullets. You can expect to die a lot during this part of the game, more often than not in gruesome ways such as being ripped apart by dogs, or having a cackling clown dance over your corpse while stabbing it repeatedly. It's this level of difficulty that brings down the game a notch. While the early stages aren't a cakewalk, they are doable if you're careful and manage your resources. On the office building stages, however, if you aren't firing rockets every 5 seconds, you're going to be overwhelmed pretty quickly by the torrent of gunfire. This is the point of the game where it goes from challenging to just give me all of your quarters. If you're playing on MAME, this isn't really a big deal as you can just continue, which does grant you a refill of your rockets and therefore allows you to send flaming corpses flying through the air, which admittedly is quite satisfying. When you manage to get to the top floor of the Crack Enterprises building, you'll face off against Mr. Big, who is a machine gun wielding, wheelchair-bound crime boss. His first form is fairly easy to deal with, as he just rides across the screen while peppering you with bullets and sicking his dogs on you. His second form, however, is one of the most disturbing final bosses ever. A giant, constantly laughing severed head that shoots fireballs from his eyes and spits tongues at you. If you manage to hit him enough times, his face melts off and his skull continues attacking you. Unfortunately, for some reason, the designers made it impossible to continue during this boss fight, instead forcing you to start the fight over from scratch. This means if you want to see the ending to the game, you'll have to beat him in 1 credit, which is incredibly difficult since everything he sends at you drains your health at an alarming rate. The difficulty aside, Narc is a glorious throwback to the over-the-top 80s and the anti-drug hysteria that was prevalent at the time. There's always something on screen to shoot. It's a blast to send a rocket into a crowd of attacking drug addicts and watch them fly across the screen engulfed in flames. And if you have a friend, they can join as well. This is definitely worth a playthrough.